So with the announcement of the new Global Fight League coming out in 2025, a lot of people are talking about what promotion could rival the UFC someday. A lot of people say it's PFL, a lot of people say it's KSW, One Championship, Ryzen even, but a lot of people do not talk about Octagon MMA, and they don't talk about Octagon MMA in general. So in this video, I wanted to talk about a very underrated promotion that I feel like has sneakily gone out there and begun rivaling the UFC in certain aspects of the promotion. And what I am talking about when it comes down to Octagon MMA and them rivaling the UFC is the ticket sales. Earlier in 2024, they did one of the biggest MMA events ever, selling out 59,000 tickets in attendance in a stadium show in Frankfurt, Germany. This was an 11-fight MMA card. They sold out the stadium. Some sources like Tapology says they had an attendance of 59,148. Other sources say they had ticket sales of 58,000. And if they did really sell 58,000 tickets, which it looks like they did according to a lot of photos, that is more tickets than the UFC ever has in one event. Now, you could say the UFC doesn't do stadium shows, Dana White doesn't like stadium shows, but this is still the biggest, highest attendance MMA card ever. And if you do look at it, this is the Octagon 62 event, which it did happen. And there is a stadium in the background. It looks pretty sold out. They had an Arsenal player present the King of Germany main event belt, which is pretty cool. They even had some people performing at the halftime show. Octagon 62, one of the biggest MMA events of all time that I think a lot of people don't realize how big that event truly was. And overall, Octagon does actually have a pretty big following on social media. Now, their social media presence is nowhere near as strong as the UFC's. It's not as strong as the PFL's, but it still is quite strong. They have Octagon Instagram pages in multiple languages. They add up to 900,000 followers. They've got 500,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel. And then across other social media as well, they do have a lot of followers there as well. Octagon, for the most part, they're just putting events out there in arenas and they're selling out those arenas every single time. Something that honestly the UFC just isn't doing right now, because what they're doing is they're doing the UFC Apex events without the crowds, of course. Octagon 65 was the most recent event that they did. This happened at the very end of 2024, where, in my opinion, their best fighter main evented in Noone Kaita, and he actually defeated Ronald Paradiser, who's a very fun striker, in the main event in the second round. And this took place in the O2 Arena in Prague, Czech Republic, and that arena has a capacity of 20,000 people, and they very likely did sell at least 14,000 tickets for that event there. And this is Noone Kaita. You may have heard of him. Pretty big deal of a fighter. Looking at Octagon MMA's Instagram, they have 705,000 followers. This is, I believe, the English Instagram. They do have a Czech Republic, a Czech language Instagram as well, which must have nearly 200,000 followers as well. And they do just kind of post typical MMA, UFC content. Their YouTube channel, I'm actually going to compare this to the PFL's YouTube channel in just a moment, where they have 500,000 subscribers. They upload a lot of videos with a very large variation in how many views they get. Like, some of them are getting 20,000 views, some of them are getting only 4,000 views, some of them are even getting about 100,000 views as well. And if you actually do look into this, the PFL and Octagon are actually putting up very similar amounts of views. Now, PFL seems to really be focused on highlight videos and stuff like that, but for the most part, they really are just doing like replays of fights. They're also doing highlight videos of their own right, kind of similar content, but Octagon MMA is pulling just slightly more views, and PFL is a promotion that a lot of people talk about as being one of the biggest. Now, of course, if you do look at Octagon MMA, they've got many shows planned ahead. This is something that some promotions don't have. The PFL, you never know when the finals is going to be on until it's announced 3 weeks before. You never know when round 2 of their season is going to be on until it's announced a couple of weeks before. Octagon's already got their entire thing announced prior to it even happening. If this event here in Frankfurt is the same, it might be in a stadium again, selling out another big card. But they already do have a few pretty big events announced that I think that you probably should check out and have a look at. All of their fights are actually broadcast on DAZN. The next event that they're doing is going to be February 1st. It's taking place in January, and then they are going to where I believe is the Czech Republic after that. And this one here is doesn't seem to have a main event announced just yet, but they're doing their middleweight tournament. This is another thing as well about Octagon that I do like. They do tournaments, but they're not a gimmick like the PFL is, in my opinion. They have their ranking system, they have a champion, and then throughout the year they will do tournaments in different weight classes, and the winner, I believe, sometimes wins €1 million, up to €1 million. So it's a pretty big deal. And Mateusz Pinhas is a fighter I'm very excited to see fight at this tournament, because he is a former Glory kickboxer and has been looking pretty good since his loss to Cedric Dumas a couple of years ago. And then, of course, you go to Octagon 67. This one has the main event now. Sam Creasy is going to be looking to defend his belt. Sam Creasy, very good flyweight fighter. And, of course, we have the other side of the 185-pound tournament with Mark Humm on there, who I believe was on The Ultimate Fighter. Mick Stanton's kind of just a very much of a... I don't really know if you call him a legend of local European MMA, but I guess you could. Multiple-time, long-time fighter for Cage Warriors, and then just overall a bunch of prelims as well. Octagon, they just sell tickets, and that's really what I wanted to showcase in this video. I wanted to talk about an underrated promotion that I feel like people just don't talk about enough. It's a good promotion. I think you should check it out. I struggle to keep up with it sometimes because their events are on at 3 AM in New Zealand, because they're in Europe and the time difference is nearly exactly 12 hours. But a lot of people now are talking about the UFC killer, the next big promotion to take over the UFC. I think a lot of people secretly want it to be the PFL, but if you're looking at a promotion that is really doing its own thing in Europe, the UFC doesn't really go to Europe that much. Octagon's starting to really take over, man. And if Octagon starts to expand to different countries, like maybe they do try and rival KSW in Poland one day. Maybe they do try and rival even the UFC in France one day. I mean, I could see Octagon MMA expanding and really trying to take over the MMA space from Europe, instead of trying to tackle the US like the GFL seems to be doing, the PFL seems to be doing. The USA holds the entire US market pretty much, I would say. And Octagon MMA, and that's the thing about the US. They have strong fan bases in Europe, but a lot of them watch KSW and Octagon and Cage Warriors and stuff like that. And then in Asia, the UFC has like little to no hold on them, because they all just kind of watch Ryzen and One Championship. So that's why the UFC's going to Asia. That's why the UFC's going to Europe. They're trying to really take over the whole world. But promotions like Octagon MMA in Europe and KSW, they're standing pretty strong. And honestly, as I said, Octagon MMA, not talked about enough. This genuinely is a underrated promotion that I think that you should check out. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.